Hello, and welcome to another episode of Product and Cake. Today, in the virtual video studio of our podcast, is Paul. How you doing, Paul?
I'm good, thank you, Ghonche. How are you doing?
I'm good. I have a what's it called? The gummy worm in my hand, and I was just thinking, what is your favorite model or like what is your favorite candy snack, like sweet?
My favorite candy snack is definitely baklava.
Ooh,
This
okay. But it's not something that we can easily go and get in the supermarket, to be honest. Is it? Can
is
you
it?
do that?
It is. I can buy it from Lidl even. It's
What?
yeah, but the quality is not the one you want to have to get used to it. But in
Okay.
Berlin, yeah, plenty of shops like Turkish bakeries. I
Nice.
could I could spend the whole day there and
Nice.
try everything. I love it. It's the perfect combination from honey and nuts. That's
Okay,
definitely
nice.
my thing. What is your
I
favorite snack?
my favorite is actually um not sweet. My favorite snack is not sweet, it's sour. It's called lava shack. It's a Persian snack. But if we just talk about the sweet stuff, it's definitely gummy bears.
Hmm,
The Haribo gummy bears, especially the ones that are sour a little bit. Yeah, that's my go-to. Yeah.
nice.
But now that we talked a little bit about baklava, I know it's not a baklava, but yesterday I had a kanofe and it was really good. It's kind of like the um shredded part of the baklava, when like the ones that look like a bird's nest baklava.
Hmm.
It's that, and in
Hmm.
the middle of it is cheese,
Oh,
and it's really good. I should definitely I will write to you after recording this, so maybe you can go and have a bite.
yeah. Yeah, it's time that we have a physical recording again, and
Yeah,
then we
yeah,
also
that's
can
true.
have cake finally back in the podcast. That is maybe also important.
That is true. All right. We wanted to talk about something that is, we are on opposite sides of the spectrum on it in terms of how we see it. Do you want to introduce the topic, Paul?
Sure. We just started to talk about a new exciting role in the product universe that is called product ops, product operations. And I'm more in the tech world, so for me DevOps is quite common, and it is absolutely logical that you split the responsibilities of the team, that one is developing it, the other one is taking care about scalability, about maintenance, about providing. Yeah, maybe that definition is not totally right. I mean, the one building the software, the other team is building the hardware or providing the hardware where this software application is running. So I want to make sure that I have experts that know exactly what's going on in that machine. They work close together with the engineers to make sure that the whole thing is working. So from my perspective, it makes so much sense if I have a bunch of product managers, or let's say more product people, to dedicate the task on how do we work together, what are our tools, what is our applications, what is the way how we are treating users, and the knowledge we get from them. How do we make sure that this is um, comparable across teams?
Yeah.
So makes so
Basically,
much sense to have product operations. What do you think, Gonche?
well, so I understand where you're coming from. And I understand that if you have it with only the tech perspective, that one group of people focus on actually the delivery and another focus on optimizing the process, training, tools, etc. I understand how it makes sense. but I don't necessarily see it as as it needs to be a separate department. I understand that, yes, depending on the maturity of the company, of the maturity of the product, team members, you might need to invest a lot in training, in tools, in processes, but also for me the difference between product and tech here is the human connection. In tech, you usually, for like between 100 developers that are working on a very specific tech stack, a lot of the tools and the processes can be streamlined and can be similar. But when we are talking about product, you're not looking at software and looking at only the processes. It's a lot about human connection. Who are you talking to? Who is your team? How does your team work? um, what is your team's preferred way of communication? um, what is your team's area of responsibility? Who is which functions are within your team? And that is really dependent on that specific team, on that specific PM. And you cannot have a one size fits all solution that, oh, every team uses Kanban, every team uses Kanban like this, every team uses Jira, every team documents things like this, all of the OKRs will look like this. Like, trying to pull this simplification over everything actually makes things much more complicated.
Yeah, that's true. And you could easily construct the same picture in the engineering team, right? If you have 100 engineers, it is very easy to come up with 100 tech stacks or even 200 tech stacks on how to solve problems. And then,
Yeah.
based on the engineering strategy, you need to decide, um, do I want to have one tech stack for everything that comes with pros and cons, or do I want to have the best suiting technology for the given problem? Um, but nevertheless, how you decide, I think this role that make sure to focus on knowledge exchange and to at least note down what we have could be super super beneficial, right? If I run a new tech team and they said, okay, I need to go with Elixir now and have the Phoenix framework because that is the perfect technology for my problem, it would be so beneficial to have someone who's pointing out and say, hey, there over there is the other team who's doing the same. You do your kickoff together because we want to make sure that you don't run into the same issues. So why not having that when your PM is asking you to switch over to Kanban, to tell them, hey, there are this other team failed and the other one is super successful with it. Maybe you should follow our company Kanban suggestions. I don't want to call it guidelines because that sounds too much like one size fits all, but exactly facilitating this human connection could be one of the responsibilities I would see in that position.
But can't that be part of every single product manager's role? Don't you-
Can it? I'm not sure. I'm not sure because if you have tough problems and let's say 5 engineers who are a little bit bored and waiting for tickets, and then it is easy to fall into the trap of details and focusing only on your task, right? And maybe you are losing the ability to look around or to take time to investigate what other teams, how other teams are working.
Yeah, but that is in general, I would say maybe it lies with not necessarily the product ops, but it lies with maybe agile coaching. Maybe it can lie with the product department in general, like the product excellence does not necessarily need to have a separate function as product excellence to serve the rest of the product, but it can be within each one of those team members. And I, to be honest, I know that this might not necessarily be a very popular opinion, but I do think the same way about QA. So I don't think manual QA should manual quality assurance for the product and tech topics should necessarily exist. I'm not saying about the physical products, that is a complete different story. But when we are talking about digital product and tech topics, I don't think manual QA should be a role. It should be in the responsibility of every single person in that team to assure the quality of the product that they deliver. And the automated tests, everything is also still within the developer. So each person needs to take that into their responsibility. And this is kind of a muscle that needs to be practiced and learned through time, with first with the guidance of maybe a trained QA, that is this is their role, and then after a while that role should not exist anymore. So if a QA actually does their job really really well, their role should not exist anymore. And I'm also going to shout out to one of my closest friends who's an amazing QA engineer, and that is basically what she preaches as well. As a QA, she also and I'm gonna say hi, Emmy. So it's an actual shout out. And she also preaches the same thing, that as a QA, which is this is her role, she will consider this a success if her role is not needed after a couple of years in the company. And I do this think the same about the product ops. I do think that it is needed for specific problems and a specific needs to create this function with with a group of people who are an expert in a certain topic, and then they work a little bit horizontally over all of the different departments, all of the different teams, support with education, and after a while that role should not exist. That they should be out of that company and maybe go to another company and deliver the same thing. I'm saying this with the mindset that I do think currently bringing the DEI topics, making our product much more accessible, is something that the muscle has not yet been built in a lot of product and tech companies. And for that, it does make sense that there is this group of people, there is this one team that works on the DEI aspect of the product, but just provides education, provides training, makes sure that this gets built into the DNA of each and every product team. And after a year and a half, that team should not exist anymore. It should dissolve. The same about product ops.
Interesting. I like that approach. But first of all, Amy, we are currently evaluating if we should hire a QA engineer. So if you are up for a call, I would be super happy.
We
Just
should
ping me.
invite
Don't
her
have my details.
to an
Oh,
episode.
yeah, that's even better. That's even better than dive into the QA requirements and needs. I really like what you said. How about defining roles that are successful if they are not needed anymore?
Mm.
Right? And if you do that, you need to find people who are really into that, right? Or you need to give them a perspective afterwards to say, hey, if you don't have your role anymore, there's a new one for you in the company. Otherwise, you will never have the motivation inside the person to make them self obsolete. You need to find out what is your issue, right? Or what is the current problem you like to solve. And I think we talked already about role descriptions, because
Yeah, we
I
did.
really like this approach to say, okay, we have a massive pain here and there. So, and we are not, our product managers maybe are too overwhelmed to fulfill this product ops role just on the side. Or we need to hire 10 more product people, and we need to make sure that they get integrated as good as possible. I think there need to be some kind of this requirements to verify that role. And if you have that, I think it makes so much sense to exclude people from the daily pressure and from the hard business key results, or however you want to structure it, but to pull someone out and make them responsible to talk to people, to find out how the people are working, maybe also to jump into teams that are struggling at the moment and just support the product manager who would otherwise burn out, like a like fire workers or something that run around and not only get rid of the fire, but also let's apply the following approaches we want to have in the company. And to do that, I think you need to be this kind of person who really enjoy doing it, but you also need to have, and I don't know where this should come from, but you need to have a strong vision somehow, right? A product management
Yeah.
vision, something where you say, okay, this is really how I feel it and how I want to have it in this company.
Yeah, that is true. And just a note, Paul, I think your microphone changed in the
Oh,
meantime, so I hear you a little bit differently.
thanks.
Uh, yeah, no worries. Um, yeah, I completely agree. You need to have very clear idea of where you want to take this, and along the way, what are the exact problems you need to solve. As an example, if experimentation is your current problem, it does make sense to have a person who has the expertise of experimentation in the product org, and that person builds educational program trainings, um, frameworks, and shares this within the group, builds that muscle, and that role does not exist. But products ops in general that tries to work on, I don't know, continuous improvement on the product function, cross-functional work, etc., is a little bit too broad for me as a role to exist. Because if the role is, your main goal is not to exist anymore, because you want to, if you're doing such a good job at product operations, it should be fantastically flowing after a few years, that your role should not exist. If that is the goal, then you need to be much more precise which problems are you tackling at each point, and you cannot expect that one person, one single person, or group of three even, which in a company um, of I don't know, like maybe 800 people, a group of three, a group of five is actually a pretty large group, that only focuses on product ops. But even a group of five people that is working on product operations is not going to be expert in all the topics to the extent that they can solve all of those problems. They're either going to be a very good generalist, which means that probably in also a few years, some of those problems might have been solved, some of those problems might have not even been discovered. Or they are really good at one topic and they tackle that and they're done with that and they go to the next topic.
So it's a critical role, right? And you should align that very well with your product strategy. Not where the product
Yeah.
itself should go, but how do you want to identify
The product
the
org
product
should
org
look like.
strategy? Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's a critical thing. It should not be something should be not it should not be a side project or something to say, ah, yeah, we need that. We see some random issues here and there. Let's see if they can help us. This role can help us, but instead come with a clear idea and an agenda why this is here and how this could be obsolete within a few years. Or
Yeah. And it should be, yeah, go on.
oh,
Sorry.
I was just thinking about how we measure that this problem is solved. One of the toughest issues, right?
Yeah.
To find out, did we solve the problem or did we fire the PM who raised that problem over and over again? Sometimes neither.
Yeah. And uh, yeah, fair. I think we can go into the discussion of how we can measure the maturity of the product org, and that's like, there are a lot of different scales for that as well. So we can say, for experimentation, currently the team is here, we need the team to be here, so that's the gap that we need to solve, and that's why we need product ops. I do not like to call them product ops. I prefer to call them, if they are working on experimentation, they are the experimentation group, or experimentation expert, or whatever, experimentation manager team, and they're going to help solve this issue, and then they're out. But product ops is such a broad term that does not make any sense. And I know my opinion might be a little bit controversial here. um, I know some people might not necessarily like this episode of the podcast, but I am more than happy to have a one-on-one with them and discuss this further
We need to have them
and
as a
make it.
guest and dive deeper in.
You really want to stir the pot. Yeah, but we can go to another long conversation about how to measure the maturity of the product team and how to find these problems alongside of the product org, and yeah, and then what should the role of the, not necessarily product ops, but product ops alike teams or people be in this kind of situation.
Was that the cliffhanger for our next episode?
Yes.
Awesome. Then don't forget to subscribe and recommend us some product ops people who are really into that role.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I made some people sad or mad after this episode, but please reach out to me. Let's have a talk about it. Maybe you can change my mind, and then I will come to the podcast and I apologize and I say I'm a changed.
Yeah, and ideally, let's do that in public. It's much more exciting. One-on-ones is so yesterday.
Yeah, as you like.
Yeah. Never
Just
give
reach
up.
out to me.
There are always. If there is no one who's saying that is not needed, then there's something wrong.
That is true. That is true.
Have a beautiful
All
day.
right.
Don't forget to subscribe and
You
recommend.
too.
See us in the next episode.
Bye.